The following is a fan-based discussion. All properties discussed are property of Toei Inc., Bandai, Hasbro, and Subaru Productions.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, welcome to episode number 183 of Tokucast Reviews. Welcome to the Tokucast. Marcus and Jacob here. You know, I love this time of year. I do enjoy when you and I get together and review a show that has just ended.
Yes.
Or a movie that has just come out. Those are some of my favorite reviews that we've done for Tokucast, be that Dawn Brothers, King Oger, Shin Kamen Rider, Geats, so on and so forth. And here we are. Again, as with all of our reviews, this will be a spoiler review. This is a show that has just ended. So if you have not finished yet and want to, please do so before you watch, unless you don't care about spoilers. Kamen Rider Gotchard.
Before we get started, when I went to Japan last year, Gotchard had legitimately just started because we didn't even get to do our first impressions until after I got back.
True, that's why we did it for 7 episodes instead of the usual 3.
They had stuff out there that I could have bought, and if I liked this show in any capacity, I would have bought something. I bought something for Geats.
Yeah.
Bought a couple things for Geats.
Geats is a fantastic show.
Before we get there, let's start what we always do with the opening.
Okay. The opening's fantastic.
I actually really like
the opening a lot. I like Back On. I like their music. Granted, I'm only familiar with their older work because I'm not very musically literate, but I think this song is very good.
I like this song. I don't know if they did the Watch Out, Joe, Watch Out, Joe, Watch Out. I like that song that's in the show and as the insert song. I think that song is amazing. How do we want to structure this?
I was going to ask you that.
Let's do a good, bad, terrible, bad because my God.
Let's.
We're just going to end up combining the last two. So
honestly, I feel like we should just start talking and see where it takes us.
I want to talk about the one good thing I liked.
Okay, go ahead.
His name is Kajiki.
Who's that again?
The friend.
Oh, yeah, him.
I quite liked him and his story throughout this. He left more of an impression on me than anybody else in this show.
Really? I'm a little surprised.
And it's weird because he's like not a writer, he's not an alchemist, but you know, he's the friend.
No, he's just a guy. He loves obsessed with the paranormal and the supernatural.
Yes. I quite liked him as a character. The end.
That's the only thing. Wow.
Well, okay, no. Clotho.
You did mention in text that you did like her.
Yeah. I wish that she had a little bit more to do, but I love the fact that her actress was doing those fights. She was throwing every hand, all the hands, all the feet, all the knees, all the elbows. Her actress is, she's a martial artist, and they really got to use that with her as a villain. I would love for her to come back as a main heroine, or, just in a Super Sentai show as a character, especially a ranger in and of herself. I really think that she should have had more to do because they sort of flailed with her amongst a lot of other things as the show went on. Now the end. Go ahead.
I'm thinking because I think if I had to describe this show in one word, it would be frustrating.
Yeah.
Frustrating for many reasons. I suppose I won't bury the lead. I think this show is very bad.
Yeah.
I do think this show is bad, but I didn't hate it.
I did.
I don't think I hated this one.
I did.
I was more frustrated with it than I was angry with it.
Which can sometimes, in all honesty, be worse.
I feel like worse would be when you have nothing to say about it. Like the blandest ones, those are the ones that are the hardest to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. But it's just like with this, I was just really, really upset with a lot of it. Mm-hmm. The characters in this show, from Hotaro, Rine, Spanner, who really, in all honesty, probably had the most going for him throughout this show.
I disagree.
Because I never said they were good. But it was just like, I think he had...
I think Spanner sucks.
I think he had the most going for him. But every other character in this show I disliked. Mm-hmm. Even Atropos, the little girl, who's probably the best actress, it's just...
She's good, but she's not well written.
No.
And I think the first thing I want to talk about is this show is a mess.
Yes.
Structurally, this show is a mess. The first 10, maybe 15 episodes are like probably the most structurally sound.
But they're probably the worst.
No, I disagree. I think that's when the show's at its strongest.
I don't.
It's like a better Kamen Rider Wizard.
I still think
It feels like, to me, it felt like better Wizard.
It felt like worse Drive.
Granted, I didn't like Drive, but...
The first part of Drive when it's just toy. That's really what this show was at the beginning.
You did mention that, yes.
And it is exhausting. It got exhausting really fast. And it does not help. And I know we're going to end up getting more to the character later on. But Hotaro might be my least favorite main writer now.
Dang.
Right. I hate him.
Wow.
I don't think his actor... It might have been the direction. There's a good chance it was the direction. But the actor didn't really bring much to the role. I don't like Catchphrase the character. And that's what he was.
He is very much a catchphrase character. I said this, I think, during our first impressions. He feels like a plucked off the shelf shonen protagonist category A subtype 9.
He felt very Believe It.
They gave him a catchphrase that also doesn't make a lot of sense.
No!
In
Gotcha.
In terms of how it is used in certain sentences. Like, this is my gotcha. That's not a thing.
Like, I can understand where they were coming from. Like, this is the thing that I want.
Yeah, like, this is my dream. This is my want, my aspiration.
But we have words for that.
I understand it's called Gotchard. There is the gotcha element, like as in like gotcha game. We have like all the chemis.
Yeah.
There is definitely a lot of Pokemon influence that was put into this.
Yeah, very trading card heavy. It's very trading card heavy. They were selling out packs of cards for this, and he had special editions and stuff.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Especially after Gon comes in later on and gives you the rainbow versions of them. Hated that character. But then again, I have a real problem with things like this because for me, it's really hard for me to care about these Kimmies, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're really just things.
They do the thing from the Pokemon anime where they say like a word, like they say their name over and over. They don't have much in the way of personality, and because they don't animate them the ways, because like I told you earlier, I just finished watching the first season of Pokemon Horizons. The way they animate the Pokemon in that show, even though they can only say their name or make grunts and growls or whatever, you still get an expression from them. Mm-hmm. Like, Sprigatito is, snuggling up with Leto, and you can see their face. You can see them, their expression and the way the other characters are playing off of that.
Yeah.
And then in this one, it's like a little piece of plastic. It's a plastic grasshopper with a cute anime voice.
I hate Hopper. I hate Hopper so much.
Oh, no. I kind of liked him.
I hate Hopper.
I kind of liked Hopper.
I don't like characters like this.
Fair enough.
I hate characters like this.
They didn't animate them enough to give them more of a personality. They do kind of feel like things that make anime noises.
It really, the thing that the Kimmies do, especially because they end up coming back later on where they end up like taking on his suits and everything after he gets his rainbow form.
Mm-hmm.
What they do is really pack the cast. And in a bad way. Because now you have all of these. Mm-hmm. And there are too many of them. So it hurts this. You have too many people in it when you could just slash it immediately by getting rid of all the Kimmies.
Yeah, so what I was trying to do is find the arcs.
Yeah, there are.
Essentially, the show is kind of broken up into arcs. Yeah, chapter 1, Gotcha Kemi, which is the first 10 episodes. It is very much...
It really feels like the first 15.
It does feel like Monster of the Week. It's Victim of the Week. It's here is a person. They are beset by some sort of trouble. There is a Kemi involved. There's some sort of outside force that is making their life miserable. Eventually, the sisters show up.
Yeah.
Corrupt the Kemi with malice, and then it wreaks havoc, and then Gotchard destroys the malice form, and then befriends the Kemi form. And he befriends it by saying, "You and I are friends now." The Kemis don't feel like they have a lot of agency.
No. It also really feels like, especially when you say it like that, it feels like poor man's Forza.
This show weirdly feels like a Super Sentai in a lot of ways.
I would disagree, if only because of the fact that, especially for the last several years, Super Sentai hasn't felt like Super Sentai.
Well, Super Sentai has been good. That's the main thing that separates it. Is Super Sentai has been good.
Gotta get that.
But when you have people like specifically, it's in like after episode 10. Once we introduce the ability to create monsters without like any kind of like victim there to harass, and they just sort of create them, and they are fully formed, and they have like intelligence of their own, and then they are pointed in the direction, given a gentle slap on the bum, and then they go wreak havoc everywhere. That feels very Super Sentai. The creating a monster is like, my master, how may it is that I serve you? Well, you may go out there and destroy some stuff. I will do that. And then off they go. And that feels very Super Sentai. Kamen Rider, when it comes to creating monsters, has generally been, they are like monsters that like are born from human malice. They don't really have minds of their own. They're not like a separate intelligence. Or they are, in the case of something like Kuga, like they are the bad guys, like they are the monsters. And rather than like a general or a kaiji that has been like sent out at the behest of something else to wreak havoc. And so that feels a little different. This show is such... It's like, I have so many thoughts, but it's kind of hard to keep them in line. But yeah, the show is a mess. It feels like a lot of stuff that happens at the end of the show is stuff that should have happened in the middle. I
agree.
I straight up hate the middle of this show. The middle of this show, like, you have the Kamen Rider Legend stuff, and you have all the stuff with Glion, and everything is happening, and it all feels like it gets wrapped up a little too fast. It's too much focused on Hotaro. And then in the last, in episode 48 and 49, that's when Spanner and Rine get their final forms, get their upgraded forms.
They got them so late.
They get them in the second to last and penultimate in 48 episodes.
It's so weird that they got them so late. You got Rine over here who doesn't get hers until after Atropos more or less dies.
No, because Atropos has to sacrifice herself first.
To get it.
Which, why?
And then Spanna turns into Silver Iron Man. Which is cool. But it's just like... So. This happened here. And the weirdest thing is, and I think this is the issue with scaling how the powers work in this show. They almost feel weak immediately. You get a power up, weak immediately.
You only really get to see them use them in, the one fight that they have.
Iron Gotchard. Platinum Gotchard. The power-up form that he gets at the beginning with UFO and all of them.
Yeah, the level 10 chemis.
And then the burning one. It's just like, this feels really unneeded. And it felt paced terribly. And it felt worse because I didn't watch this live. I binged it all before the week that the last episode came out.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this feels terribly paced. And there's too many things for kids to get.
This show is... Yeah, I think you nailed it. This show has very bad pacing.
And it feels weird, especially coming off of Geats once again. And I'm not trying to do a comparison, at least not in how the shows worked, but I do want to do a comparison in how the toy system worked in it. Mm-hmm. Because in Geats, it was like, oh, everybody gets this.
Everybody gets this, and it's because of the death game setup, because of your sponsors can send you a care package, it's possible for anyone to get any upgrade at any time.
Yeah, and they do. But they end up coming here where it's just like Hotaro gets about 50. And they all get about an episode and a half.
I think one of my biggest problems, I will just say one of my biggest problems, I know this, is that the rules of this show keep changing. They are very inconsistent with how alchemy works, with how power-ups work, with who's dead, with who's alive. Rine's dad, did he not die when he got stabbed through the chest?
That's what we thought.
Didn't that kill him?
That's what we thought.
But then he shows up in a later episode and he's just chilling somewhere.
But apparently he made a clone or something.
Did he? I don't remember them saying that.
That because it's he has that clone when
they walk into a room and he's chilling there, just sitting down. He's like, "Oh, what's up? Oh, Rini's in trouble."
That's pretty much exactly what happens.
And then he shows up again in the last episode. There's a daddy-daughter fight scene where they fight alongside each other, but it has no emotional impact because, again, he's barely been in the show. I thought he died We saw him get stabbed through the chest. There's been no acknowledgement of him coming back. The way alchemy works, the show can't seem to make up its mind on how it works. And the first time I think we ever see it used, it's Rina use it. She uses her ring.
So he got that fire attack that happens at the very beginning of the show. He escaped but was left heavily injured. I'm sitting here like, bro, we saw you burn.
Whatever. But anyway, I think Rina is the first person we ever see use alchemy. She has the alchemy ring. All alchemists have rings. You need that. You say the magic words. A little, like a text, like title card flashes on screen. And then, like, you do something. It's kind of like, because, like, alchemy, the rules of what alchemy are in the real world have also changed throughout the years as they have been interpreted in fiction, in history. You know, it started out with a science that is designed to change other substances into gold.
Yeah.
That's what it started as.
Which is sort of what...
And then throughout fiction and history, and then it's like started throughout fiction, throughout history, throughout the years, we've seen it change with like the law of equivalent exchange and transmuting materials into other materials, not just into gold. This isn't just a means of acquiring wealth.
Which is what they did when Gotchard first showed up in the Geats movie.
And we have like an alchemy academy, and then we have like a governing body of like higher alchemists. And then we have, you know, like, I guess there are different schools throughout, and it's a secret school that only those who pass the test can enter.
Secret school.
And in the first episode, when he is admitted to the academy by Minato Sensei, who is one of the worst characters in this show, when he is admitted...
That says a lot about everything.
He is given a test. We talked about this in the first impressions. It bears bringing up now. He's given a test. He says, you have to make these two chemis weigh the same. And it ends, and he's like, well, how do I do that? They don't tell him. And reading is like, well, you have to use alchemy. To do that, you need this ring. They don't give him a ring.
That you can't get.
Because he's not an alchemist yet. And then he ends up taking the two chemis. I think it's like the grasshopper and something else. He says, you please gain weight. You please lose weight. He asked them very loudly, very nicely to try and to do that. But they do. And it works. They weigh the same. And he's like, oh, I did it. Yeah, I'm happy. And Minato Sensei just says, that's not how you were supposed to do that. How was he supposed to do that? They do not ever tell you.
Hand wave.
They never tell you what he was supposed to, quote unquote, do.
Yeah, because the explosion happens and Gosei gives you a whole new...
There's a perfectly sensible explanation for this.
Explosion.
But yeah, and then it's like, okay, so there are chemis. If he matches them, if they equal the number 10, because they all have numbers on them, they equal the number 10, he can use that to create a form. Okay, cool. And then we have the number 10 chemis, and they are like the most powerful. They cannot be tamed. But I can befriend them. So technically they can. So that rules out the window. So technically you can't, it's like they cannot be subjugated, but they can be befriended. Okay, there's 100 chemis in total. Actually, there's 101. Actually, there's 102. They keep changing it.
He has an egg inside.
Later, there's an egg inside of him. Who is his dad?
They never
tell you. Chekhov's dad is never explained.
Hopefully, and I don't even really care as much, but something tells you they're probably going to end up doing something with the Gotchard Gab movie, which is coming out this way.
Thinking. I'm like, they're probably going to tell us in a movie, or it'll just be like a decade thing where they just never explain certain things.
But the biggest issue is the fact that this is like they legitimately never show his face. This
like it's going to be some big reveal. Like it turns out that it's going to be like, I don't know, Takuya Kimura is playing his dad or something.
They have the biggest issue with explaining a lot of things in show. A lot of the stuff that ends up getting, that needs an explanation, they explain it in the show notes.
That is not good.
That's all. It reminds me of Taiga, where all the interesting stuff happens
in the audio dramas.
And then you end up having something like this from Rine's writer form doesn't even happen in show. It happens in the Gotchard Geats movie. Well, it happens, but it happens later.
It happens.
She was too weak afterwards.
She was too weak. Don't you understand? It was your fault that the bad things
Also, I don't
happened.
like her suit.
I think it's okay.
It's the helmet. It's too big.
Well, each their own. Oh yeah. Also, there's like an alchemic academy hidden in the woods. That isn't introduced until like the last 10 episodes.
Episode 40, because that's where what's his face is from.
His Sabi Senpai, his brother is from there. You have the Minato Sensei. He sucks. This character really sucks.
Terrible.
I hate this character so much.
Terrible.
He is a horrible teacher.
The abrupt heel face turn with him becoming Dread for a bit was just like, why?
It does not make any sense.
Because I feel like a lot of this you could have just done by talking.
There are the show, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are bad at communicating.
This is Fies.
This happens in that. I don't think it happens to the level of Fies, but it's still pretty awful in this. Minato just like the abrupt heel turn. I have closed the academy. I have done this. I have done this. I'm sorry, was there not some sort of governing body of alchemists who was watching over this whole thing?
Yeah, that could have told you.
Aren't there people that are like governing that? No, I guess not. What about those two alchemists who were like sent in and one of them turned out to be evil? Well, who cares? They're gone. They're not in the story anymore. One of them died. The other one, I think he appears later and like some person in a costume walks behind a tree and says like, what shall we do next? And then they are never shown in the show ever again. They're never in the show again.
So many plot points that are getting dropped. And it's just like, they wanted to go the direction with like an evil academy, but it just would have been Saber all over again. But then we still end up getting that with Gurion. So who cares?
Gurion's the worst.
Yeah.
He's a terrible villain.
And it's weird because, I mean, you
villain.
weirdly enough had something sort of similar with like a governing body in Dawn Brothers, but Dawn Brothers makes a point of really not caring about them. Because Don Momotaro does not care.
Dawn Brothers also made a point of having interesting characters that you care about in a script that made like the characters just sitting in a room and talking with each other the most interesting part of the show.
And it's so funny.
And then in this one, it's like the characters just kind of, they go out and they don't have anything in common aside from the fact that they're alchemists and they want to get chemis. Like when Sabi Senpai becomes Kamen Rider Dread, when that happens, like in like the 15 or so episode arc, around episode 15 I should say, when that happens, I think the actors do a good job of like giving it a sense of dramatic weight, but when they save him, and Hotaro is like, Sabi Senpai, let's go look for more chemis together. That's all you have in common.
It feels like a reset to zero every single time.
We haven't had any like interpersonal exchanges. We don't learn anything about either him or Renge until, again, the last 10 episodes.
I don't even remember what we learned about Renge.
She's from like a small town where she was really poor. One of the reasons she wanted to become an alchemist is because she could do the gold transference thing and get money because she grew up poor.
El Dorado is stupid.
Okay.
Gurion's entire plan is stupid.
You know what I thought of when his plan was finally revealed? I love gold!
He really is gold member.
I lost my junction in a horrible smelting accident.
But I feel like if you're going to watch anything with El Dorado, go watch El Dorado.
The Rotel Dorado? Yes. I rewatched it recently, actually.
It's a great movie.
Or watch El Dorado, the John Wayne Western. That's a good one. Or watch...
anything else that isn't this.
Or play Uncharted 1, you know, something else.
This show...
I need to talk more about Gurion. I need to talk more about him.
I hated him so much.
You talk about hating catchphrase the character. That's kind of what he was.
Yeah.
Chemistry. That's what they give him. He says chemistry. Kamen Rider Legend. He says gorgeous. Hotaro says gotcha. Spanner says this is a ridiculous joke. Minato Sensei says
and Rine says cardboard. God damn. You know what? We haven't really gone into the characters enough, and I don't really want to talk about them all that much because I hate them. Hotaro sucks. Rine is awful, especially at the beginning.
You think so?
Yes. I want to become the best alchemist. You're in school to learn alchemy. I want to surpass my father. You're in school to learn alchemy. And then it's just like her delivery is god awful.
Really?
It's so nothing.
It's not the worst performance in this show. I thought she was okay.
No, that's Hodor. But it's just
I disagree.
It's just like the flat of it. Spanner could have done something. I feel like I said, if this show would have focused on him and his story and everything with his parents that got resolved in an episode and a half, I feel like we would have had something to do.
Spanner really sucks. I think he's a terrible character. He shows up and he's like, I'm the cool one, and I'm aloof, and I don't need anyone.
And I'm
I
a
don't
level
have
A
emotion,
alchemist.
and I'm a badass. Bleh. And then he fights monsters, and I'm better than you, Kamen Rider.
And then he gets
and
his
then
ass
he just immediately gets nerfed. Nerfed.
That's both him and Rine after they get their
I think
rider.
him to a much more extent.
Oh yeah, it's worse.
Much worse for Spanner. He gets nerfed so hard. He gets just bodied by every monster. Finally becomes Kamen Rider. Even then, he can't hold his own.
He has one of the greatest moments in his like Rider debut fight when the monster's like trying to attack him. And he's just walking away slowly. I'm sitting here like, oh, that was cool.
That was good.
That was cool. And then
Pity it was in this.
Nothing.
Yeah, because then the show's over.
No, and then because he gets in like the early 20s, the show keeps going, and that's the problem.
I was thinking of like his final form, but yeah. But anyway, Spanner also, when he also gets a random heel turn because suddenly he develops a martyr complex. Out of nowhere, Spanner is like, I must die for your sins. Don't you get it?
Lachesis, who is now on our side.
Who is now human and kinda we have a romance, but it's the most underdeveloped thing. You just put a gun.
Pew!
And a gun!
And then she gets shot.
Oh my... Her death scene, the only thing that was missing was a countdown clock.
It really was.
She catches the thing and is like jumping up and down and celebrating, and I'm just like, 5, 4, 3, 2... And there it is.
We're just like, well,
and your character arc is complete. You did nothing. Congratulations. Her start to turn, like, the idea that she becomes infatuated with Spanner. Oh, you're in a way that, like, not like, oh, I love you, but like, oh, you're interesting. I'm fascinated by you and your tenacity and your willingness to rebel against us, against the will of Glion-sama. You're fascinating. I want to follow you around. And if, like, that happens and then that leads to maybe stronger feelings later, that changes to her desire to becoming human, and then, like, I don't know, she sacrifices herself, or it's a happy ending. Who knows? It could go either way. But she's in the show so little, and again, they backload it so much. Like, nothing, there's so much nothing in the middle of this show. And then you get to the last 10 episodes, and that's when they're backloading everything, like character motivations, plot devices, people coming back, new villains out of nowhere, all this stuff. Here you go. And it's just a mess. And there is something I absolutely need to talk about. Something in this show that drove me absolutely freaking bananas.
This show?
So there is a certain trope, certain plot device that is used, I swear, I think like 3 or 4 times, might be more than that throughout this entire show. And that is something I absolutely hate. And it's when a villainous character says to the hero, you see all this bad stuff that's happening? It's your fault. This is all your fault. We as the audience are like, no, it isn't. I feel like anyone with a brain in their skull could just like look around and be like, no, you did the bad thing. I didn't do anything. You did the bad thing. You're the villain. You did the bad thing. Anyone with a passing interest in anything, or eyes or ears or any kind of sensory perception whatsoever, could see that what is happening is not their fault.
There's a reason I keep looking over to the future, because I'm looking past this show already.
As someone who has been emotionally manipulated by others in his life, I understand that on that side it can be hard to... It is like a trap that can be hard to get out of. But when it's presented like this... When it's presented by the obvious bad guy? It's... What's his name from Fruits Basket when he gets the vase smashed over his face and he loses sight in one of his eyes? And I'm specifically talking about the old show from 2003 where Akito smashes him in the face with a vase and is like, oh, I refuse to allow this. I refuse to allow you. What's wrong? You just hit him with a vase, you idiot. What do you think is wrong? And then it's like, well, if he loses his sight, then it's your fault. No, it isn't, you idiot. You're the one who hit him. And this happens multiple times throughout the show. A character will, like a friggin' little girl, Atropos, does something nasty, mind controls people, does horrible things, and then says, hey, Rene, this is your fault. No, it isn't. No, it's not.
And it doesn't even help any better, because, I mean, I think, amongst the other exceedingly weird things in this show, the Dark Kings, the fact that we only really ever thought that there was one of them, and then suddenly there are three, but apparently it's all from this one thing that gets split into three beings.
I also love how the first one that shows up is just like kind of twiddling his thumbs for the first few episodes he's introduced.
Well, because of the fact that almost immediately as soon as he came in, Legend happened.
Which was a horrible mistake, because Legend, I think Legend gives the worst performance in this show. The actor who plays Legend gives the worst performance in the show. To quote Chris Stuckman, it's like he stops acting after he stops saying his lines. He'll be like saying his line and like la 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 gorgeous and then he'll stop and the other character will start talking and his face just kind of goes dead and his eyes are like darting around. It's like, no, you're still acting, you're still in the scene, you need to be present. And it's like he says like, gorgeous. I wonder what I should get for lunch. I think they had potato salad at craft services. It's like I'm looking at him and I'm like, that actor is thinking about what he wants for lunch. He's not thinking about the scene.
Although it is hilarious, just I'm looking at the character list here because when he comes in, the first episode that he comes in with 100, that's Boone Violet, who's the only one who's not wearing his helmet. He immediately dies in this and goes to a better show.
Interesting.
This show, my God, like the villains are bad. Gideon is terrible.
I like how he wins in the final episode for 2 seconds.
Let's talk about that final episode real fast.
Let's.
Because it's there for about 3 seconds. The fight happens for 3 seconds, and then suddenly good things happen.
He wins. The world turns to gold, and he's like, yes, gold, yes. And then Hotaro, frozen in gold,
gets a Reiwa era Rider power up.
Yeah.
Because this has happened 2 other times before with Saber and 01, where they got Realizing Hopper and whatever the hell Saber's was called.
Yeah.
And then we end up getting the final form, which is just the base form, but with a slightly different color scheme.
I didn't notice.
Yeah.
I was like, it's Steam Hopper again.
Steam Humper Ultima. So it's a slightly different form.
So it's totally different by the toys, by the toys, by the toys, by the toys, by the toys.
And it's so unwarranted, annoying, and it makes the final form seem like nothing.
While frozen in gold form, just a few memories flash before his mind. We see the memories he had with his friends and his family. And then he's like, no, I'm gonna fight ya. And he breaks out of it, and Leon is like, what? How'd this happen? And I'm like, I don't know, why are you looking at me?
And then he starts losing.
Then he starts losing.
And then Hotaro creates a whole new world
for the chemis.
Which seems really counterproductive, considering the fact that the entire thing of this is like, we want to make the humans and the chemis live together. Let's put them in a whole different world and have everybody forget about them in 6 months.
I guess it's like, well, in the past 50 episodes, we've learned that maybe that isn't going to happen.
But it's still poorly
After
done.
all, social media influencers with no alchemy powers can gain access to a school that you can only access if you have alchemy powers.
Also, I love how the fact that VTubers are evil in this and in Infinite Wealth, that's funny to me. But VTubers are the root of all evil. I knew it. But yeah, it seems like the whole thing with that new world where the chemis are seems exceedingly counterproductive as to what the goal of Hotaro was. It's just really poorly done. And I do not get the emphasis on doing that throughout this entire show.
Also, the danger's over. Why do you need a new world?
Because we got to get rid of the gold somehow. I'm sitting here like, well, I guess this is still stupid.
Well, I mean, like, the world is like still there. He just created like a new one just for the chemis, and for all we know, it's like, a square plot of land floating in the ether like a video game map.
I hate this. I tried. I'm going to see if I can find that clip of Aisha saying that from
I
Alien
know.
Rangers and putting that at the beginning of this. Probably won't be able to find it. But it's just exceedingly annoying, exceedingly poorly well done. This show, like I said, feels like poor man's Forze. And the ending portion with him getting all the Kimmies feels like poor man 01 getting Realizing Hopper at the end. Because at least Realizing Hopper made sense more or less in that show. With him, like, you know, getting this from all the people around the world. This is what happens in the best Kamen Rider movie, aka Forze. I will still say that to probably the day I die, unless something else. Well, to be fair, the 011 was really good. But even still, they did this in the Forze movie. They did it in 01. It made a lot more sense there than just giving him from the powers of the Kimmies. I hate this show. I was upset watching it. I was upset before I had to watch it. I was upset when we had to do the first impressions. I was upset when the show was first shown. It's just like nothing in this show has redeemed itself from my original thoughts in our first impressions. I stopped watching the show until I had to watch it for this. This was awful. And I never want anything to do with Gotchard again.
Well, we reviewed it, so we can move on to other things.
Yes.
Like Exceed Draft.
Yes.
Which is going to be our next review.
Exceed Draft is next, and then we'll do our first impressions for Gav, which I'm much more excited about because the first episode of that comes out tonight.
Oh.
And after that, I'll be gone for a couple weeks. So it's going to be a while before we get to another review. Because after Exceed Draft, we'll actually end up being Turbo Ranger. And we got a while for that. Wow, we only have that and 5 Man to do. I believe not long after 5 Man, we do that at least a couple of months. Boom Boomja will be done. And then we'll start talking about Sentai 49.
Time marches ever onward.
Yes. Been watching Exceed Draft. I like a lot more than this. That's not hard to do, though. But yeah, let us know what you think about Gotchard in the comments below. Don't forget to join us on all the things. We'll see you next time.
If you liked it, I love that for you. Thank you for watching.
Bye.